read it. You got a Bible, you read the passage. But basically, this is the section where it talks about our friend Jacob. Jacob's a sheep herder, or not just sheep, but he's a herdsman, he's a shepherd. And what he does is he puts stakes of wood, poles, in the ground in front of the watering troughs, so that when the animals come to water, when they conceive, they'll conceive offspring that are, what the word says is streaked, ring straight, spotted. Most of the goats and sheep are one color. The primary color would be either brown or white or black. I mean, it's typically what they are. They have one that's spotted, like a pinto, like a horse with a pinto. Nothing related to horses, right? So this would be what he will use these spotted streak ones as his pay. Okay? So there's a lot of people who take a look at this thing and they say, man, that's pretty far-fetched. Right? That's definitely not scientific. Some say it's just ridiculous. There's many miracles that are spoken of in the Bible. Many of them. We talked about this the last time we met, which was several weeks ago, I guess. We talked about this before. There was a fellow by the name of Moses. Moses stood with a stick in his hand, a rod, a staff. He waved that staff over the Red Sea, and the waters parted. Brother Russell, I believe you're a man of God, but I don't believe that you can go down to Lake Lanier, pull a fishing pole over the water, and the water will part. There's no magic involved. Okay? God uses men to do His will and His bidding. So the parting of the Red Sea is one example. There's another example. How about a fellow Naaman the leper? God was a leper, had leprosy. Back in those days, incurable disease. He had leprosy. He came to the land of Israel, and he was told by the prophet to dip in the Jordan River 7 times, and his leprosy would go away. And Brother Davin, heaven forbid that you never have leprosy or some other incurable disease, but I don't believe that you can go to the Chattahoochee and dip 7 times and it's going to make you clean. Right? I don't believe that would happen. Probably would. There was a fellow by the name of Joshua. Joshua had an army. He was going into the land, and he was going to go take over the city of Jericho, walled city. How did he do it? He marched around the city 7 times, and everybody shouted, and the walls fell down. Now, I don't know of anybody that today can go to some particular place where there's a wall, walk around 7 times, shout and holler, and expect the wall to fall down. Who did the miracle? It wasn't Joshua. It wasn't Naaman. It wasn't Moses. It was God Almighty. Why did He do it the way He did it? I don't know. But look at chapter 31, which is the next chapter over. And it gives a partial explanation. Chapter 31, starting in verse number 9. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And it came to pass at that time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God said unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which sleep upon the cattle are ring-straked and speckled and grizzled, for I have seen all that Laban hath done unto thee, or Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, and get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. God told him in a dream what to do. Joshua didn't know what to do. He's at the city of Jericho. God tells him specifically, I want you to do this. I want you to march around the walls 7 times. The prophet told Naaman what to do. God tells His people what to do. God gives us promises. What are His promises?
His promises are protection. His promises are provision. And His promises are to point out the way. We've talked about this before. Jacob was given the information of what to do in a dream. That's in chapter 31. In chapter 30, he does exactly what God tells him. So we have a little bit of a parenthesis, or a little bit of jumping ahead to understand. Could we do this today? Take a pole and strip rings around the pole, stick it in the ground, and expect animals to come out a specific way? No. Because that's not what did the miracle. God Almighty did the miracle. So we need to understand that. Sir?
I believe it's got obedience has something to do with it. He saw what the dream.
Exactly.
He obeyed what God told him to do.
That's exactly right. He was told what to do, and he did what he was told. We're going to get into another section over here. I'm going to leap ahead a little bit. If we get there today, we're going to talk about Laban and how Uncle Laban was taken away, trying to take away everything that Jacob had earned in 20 years of service. I mean, it's not like he came in and watched sheep for an hour and a half and walked off with a bunch of wages. He worked for 20 years. And we're going to find out later on that his daughters, his own daughters who are married to Jacob, tell Jacob, whatever God tells you to do, do it. That's good advice. That's good advice. God tells you to do something, do it. How do you know what God tells you to do? Good question. He left us with an instruction manual. Anybody ever repair cars in here? Yeah, I know you have. Is there anything called a Chilton's manual? What's a Chilton's manual? How to do it. It's an instruction book, how to do it. At Christmas time, when our daughter and son were growing up, something would come in, a little present or whatever, a little toy. Daddy had to put it together. They gave you an instruction manual. When all else fails, read the instructions. Okay, so let's go back to where we were, where we left off at. We jumped ahead. Let's go to chapter 31, verse number 1. And speaking about Jacob here, and he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all his glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. Laban had sons. His sons were out working in the pasture. His sons expected to get an inheritance. That's how it was done back then. You'd live in a family and the sons would inherit. The eldest son would typically get twice what everybody else would get. But the sons were expecting inheritance. Laban was a herdsman. So what did the sons expect to get? Herds and flocks, right? What do they see Jacob doing? Jacob's working and he's earning his way. He's not a son, he's only a son-in-law. And yet all the good sheep are going to him. All the good goats are going to him. And so they are jealous. Jealousy is a real problem. It's a real problem in the Bible. It's a real problem today in our nation. It's a real problem, and it has been, and it's a scourge upon mankind. There were two fellows by the name of Cain and Abel. Was not one jealous of the other? Yeah, they sure enough were. There are many other examples of jealousy in the Bible, just a couple that I wrote down. How about Sarah and Hagar? Jealousy was there. How about Lot and Abram? Lot was jealous as well. Caused all kind of family trouble and strife. Ishmael and Isaac, that strife's still going on today. Esau and Jacob, that strife's still going on today. How about Joseph and his brothers? That was due to jealousy. How about Saul and David? Many, many examples. Jealousy rears its ugly head, and jealousy, in this particular case, it says Laban's face was changed. He had a change of attitude, a change of heart. Jealousy can make you have a change of heart towards one close to you, or maybe one not so close to you. Jealousy hurts that one being the one who is jealous, more so than it hurts the object of the jealousy. Jealousy. Now it's seen in Laban's family, jealous against Jacob himself. They said, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's. Look back over into chapter 30. Verse number 27. Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thy eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. Laban was in the fallout of God's grace given to our friend Jacob. He was Jacob's employer. Jacob was blessed. Because Jacob was blessed, Laban got blessing. We find out, reading on in this passage, same between verses 27 and 30, and also verse 34 of chapter 30, you'll find out that Laban didn't have a thing, hardly to start with, and he was blessed mightily over the years because of Jacob's presence. Jacob was his employee, was also his son-in-law. Jacob was a believer. Laban was not. You're a believer? You're an employee? Is your employer blessed because of your presence in his work? Are you an honest employee? Are you a good example? Are you a hard worker? I mean, that's what Christian testimony doesn't have to be speaking one to another. It's in doing as well. We need to live the life, not just speak the life. Okay? The Christian should be the best employee the employer has. I'm sure you've heard that before. Okay. They were jealous that Jacob had taken everything away, and actually Jacob had earned what he had received. God had blessed him. Verse 34 of chapter 30 says this way, Laban said, Behold, I would that it might be according to thy word. Laban had already agreed to terms. He let Jacob make his own terms. It would be like Brother Troy would be my employer, and Brother Troy would say to me, Hugh, tell me what you want for wages. I mean, that's how it was. Tell me what you want for wages. He told him, and the response was, would it be that what you have said? He agreed to those wages. So Laban wasn't taken. Laban wasn't deceived. He went into this with his eyes wide open. His countenance fell. Let's read that again. Verse number 2, And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. While you're in the book of Genesis, turn over to chapter 4. Look at verse number 5. But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth. That means angry. And his countenance fell. You ever see anybody that's mad? Gets mad at you? I'm sure you've experienced this in life. Somebody that you've been in relationship with, you have a friendship with, or an employee, fellow employee, or whatever, and they look one particular way, and all of a sudden you know something's wrong. You know it's wrong just by the way that they look at you. His countenance fell. In Cain's case, his countenance fell, and he murdered. I mean, it fell a bunch. Think about this. Jacob has been with Laban 20 years. He's worked 7 years for Leah, where he was cheated and was given Leah. He really wanted Rachel. Then he worked another 7 years for Rachel. Now he's worked 6 years for the cattle so that he can start his own family and support his own family. He's got 20 years with Laban, and Laban's countenance now turns on him. Because of what? Because of jealousy. Jealousy is a very harmful thing. Very difficult thing. Okay, verse number 3 through 9. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and unto thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field of his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it has not toward me as before. But the God of my fathers hath been with me. And you know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. If I said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ringstraked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ringstraked. And thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. Jacob realizes that it's time to leave. Sometimes God puts you in a place, and he puts you in a place forever. I mean, you're going to live, you're going to die in one particular place. But other times, God will take people and move them around from place to place and move them for different areas. We were talking the other day, Devin and I were talking the other day about different churches. I've been to different churches in my life. I was in the computer business. We moved all over the place. I mean, we would be in one place for a little while and move someplace else a little while. So I've been to churches in Michigan, in Florida, Indiana, Tennessee. I mean, all over the place. Louisiana, been living there. God moved me from place to place by my employer. And so I had an opportunity to be in different churches and see different things, and have learned over time different lessons in different churches, different places. So so God's telling Jacob after 20 years, go home, return, go back to your kinfolk, go back to your family. Now think about this. What happened that caused Jacob to leave his home in the first place? Talk to me. Why did Jacob leave in the first place? His family, right? What did his brother Esau tell him he was going to do? You're going to kill him. So he left home because his brother threatened his life. So now he's been away for 20 years. He's gotten himself a family. He's gotten himself flocks and herds. He's got a family. I mean, he got 4 wives and 12 kids, 11 sons plus Dinah, his daughter. He got a family. And he's been away for 20 years. Laban has mistreated him, has cheated him, has been deceitful to him, has done all kinds of things against him for 20 years. I mean, how would you like to have the love of your life in front of you, and you've worked for her for 7 years, only to find out that her daddy switched on you at the end? I wouldn't be too happy. But anyway, he's been there for 20 years, and now it's time to go home. He's leaving Laban, which is a known bad, for Esau, which is an unknown bad. He's got to have some faith to do this. I mean, to tell you to just pick up and leave and go someplace, that takes some faith, right? It takes some faith on Jacob's part. So he has faith. He trusts in God. He believes in God. He says, return and I will be with thee. Do you remember back in chapter 28, God was at a place called Bethel? The word Beth means house or temple. El means the most supreme high God. Bethel, El Bethel means the God of the house of God, or the God of the temple of God. That same God that sent him in the first place to Haran, 500 miles from home to find a wife, that same God is now telling him, go back home again. We don't see anywhere in the Bible that we've been reading that during this 20 years that Jacob has had an ongoing conversation with God. I mean, speak about a dry spell, 20 years is a long time. We don't see anywhere. He may have, I don't know. But we don't see any constant conversation or talking back and forth over 20 years. And now God comes along and says, I want you to go back.
No longer.
Yeah, and he tells them, he says, I am the God of Bethel. By the way, I'm the one that told you where to go in the first place. I'm the one that told you that I will be with you. Now I'm telling you, go home and I will be with you. No matter what God tells you to do it. And that's easy to say and not so easy to do sometimes. Okay, let's go on. The wives were informed of the plan. The section that we just read, Jacob is instructed of God what to do. And he goes and tells his wives. He calls Rachel and he calls Leah and he tells them. He doesn't tell Zilpah, he doesn't tell Bilhah what's going on. They're handmaids. They're, I don't want to say this without getting in trouble. They're like second-class citizens almost in this family. They're not wives. They're concubines, okay? And so they're not part of the inner circle, but they're going to be affected by this just as well. Okay? So they're going to find out just as well. Going on in this chapter that we just read about, the angel of God, we went through 9 through 13 before where God had told him what to do. So we're going to skip over that portion of it, and we're going to go to verse 13 through 16. 31, 13 through 16. Somebody there will read it for me, will you?
I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou bowest the vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out of this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him as strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do.
I am the God of Bethel, the God of your fathers. So he's identifying himself just to make sure that there's no misinformation here. I am the God of Bethel. I'm the one that you talked to, that you spoke with, that you had relationship with, that you heard, that you saw climbing up and down the ladder. I am the one from Bethel. I'm the God of your fathers. And I'm telling you to go home. Okay? I'm telling you to go home. His wives, Rachel and Leah, are now upset. They know that Daddy has done their husband wrong all these years. They know that. They're not stupid. But now they're saying, hey, where's my inheritance? Right? They're saying, where's my inheritance? He sold us. I mean, he did. Laban actually sold his daughters. He said, yeah, you can marry my daughter for 7 years of labor. He said, you can marry the other one for another 7 years of labor. Oh, by the way, I'll give you some sheep and some goats to start your family off with, but you got to work for them for another 6 years. He's cheated not only Jacob, he's cheated his own kinfolk, his own daughters, his own flesh and blood. He's cheated them. And they're saying, hey, where's mine? Where's my inheritance? Is not part of this mine. And verse 15 says, he hath sold us, and he hath quite devoured also our money. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a dowry. And Laban has taken the dowry. They tell him this, it's in verse number 16. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. Reminds me of another place in the Scripture. Look at John chapter 2. Keep your fingers where you're at. John chapter 2, verse 5. John chapter 2, verse 5. This is talking about the first miracle that Jesus did. We'll start off a little further up. We'll start out with verse number 1. And the third day was a marriage of Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. So we're identifying who's there. Jesus' mother, Mary, was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto them, They have no wine. And Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother, who are we talking about? Mary. Mary saith unto the servants, what's she say? Whatsoever he saith unto thee, do it. Good advice. Same advice that was given Jacob by his wives. Who's preeminent here? Is it Mary that has the preeminence in this passage? It's Jesus. Do what he says. Right? Jacob's wives are telling him, do what he says. Same thing. Verse number 17. And Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and carried away all his cattle and all his goods, which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, and where he had gotten in Paddan Aram, for to go to Isaac, his father, in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel, which had stolen the images, which were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled and with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward Mount Gilead. You recall that Laban and Jacob made an agreement on what Jacob's wages would be. And they decided that Jacob's wages would be all the spotted cattle, rather than go into all the different terminologies for them. All those that were multicolored would be Jacob's. And to make sure that there was no intermingling of the flocks, Laban took his solid colored ones and moved 3 days' journey away. So now we see it's time for our friend Jacob to leave. He packs up his family, he packs up his flocks and herds, and he leaves surreptitiously. He doesn't tell them what's going on. We find out later on why he doesn't tell them, but you can imagine why he doesn't tell his father-in-law what's going on. So he leaves. He's got 3 days head start. God's given him a head start. Why would he need a head start? Because he's driving animals. He's driving sheep and goats and whatever, and they're not going to move as fast as somebody on horseback or somebody on donkey back. So he gives them 3 days head start. The passage we just read says that Laban was shearing his sheep. Now, I don't know what you know about sheep, but shearing, when it comes to shearing time, you need to do the job and get her done before you can concentrate on other things, because you can lose some of the quality of the wool. So he's got 3 days head start when Laban finds out, and he's into shearing his sheep. Apparently, he waits another 4 days. We're going to find out by reading on a little further that our friend Laban and his sons are in hot pursuit. They're in very hot pursuit because they're chasing after our friend Jacob and his wives and his sheep and goats and all that. And he travels 300 miles in 7 days. Now that doesn't sound like a lot to us today when we've got cars and we've got planes and we've got all these kind of things. But you get on a horseback, right? Not even a donkey or a mule, but get on a horseback and drive 300 miles in 7 days. I looked it up. It's about 43 miles a day. Anybody ever ride a horse? How would you like to be on a horse for 43 miles in a day and do that day after day for 7 days? This is hot pursuit, okay? I mean, he's after him. He's chasing after him. He's mad. He's angry. What's his intention? What do you think his intention is? Yeah, he's wanting all of his animals back. Okay? He probably wants Jacob back, but only as a slave, as a servant to work for him, right? And he'll take back his daughters and his grandkids at the same time, and so he's going after them.
Another thing is after that, God's.
We're going to talk about that. Let's address that right now. He uses that as an excuse when he's going after Jacob. They meet up in Mount Gilead, and he says, somebody stole my terrapin, my gods, my household animals, my household gods that I have in my house. Let me ask you this. Would you get on a horse and ride 43 miles a day for 7 days, chasing after your son-in-law for a couple of household gods? I mean, would it not be cheaper to replace them from home than going through all that effort and aggravation and grief? And oh, by the way, you don't know when you get there what's going to happen. Yeah, you've got your sons with you, but you know, our buddy Jacob's got his sons with him too. And oh, by the way, he's also got other servants. And there could have been a serious physical confrontation here. Yeah, he had gods that he took from them, but is it really worth that? You know, I don't think so. Let's close in prayer. Brother Devin.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you again grateful for this day, Father. We thank you for this time we've spent in your word.